Good morning, everybody, to our 2020 Careers Practitioners Seminar at the University of Melbourne. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which our campuses are situated, the Wurundjeri, Boon Wurrung, the Yorta Yorta Nation and the Dja Dja Wurrung people. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians who have made a contribution to the life of the university community. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which many of our guests are situated in every state and territory of Australia and New Zealand. So, thank you very much for attending our seminar today. I hope some more people will join us as we go through. As I said at the beginning, we have people from every state and New Zealand, and it's really pleasing to see how many people we've got from regional and remote Australia, including some of Barney's friends from Queensland, from all around New South Wales and every other state. So we've already received a lot of questions from you today, and we'll aim to answer your questions throughout the presentation. If we can't answer them at the time, we will provide some answers in the material that goes out to you after. There's no need to take any notes. You'll receive a link to the presentation so you can go back and have a look at it after, just an hour after it finishes. So this session is the first in a series. So we decided to avoid Zoom fatigue, both for you and for us. So we're starting off today. We will follow this up with some other more discipline focused sessions later. There's some information for you. This is what the seminar will happen today. So we've got our Vice-Chancellor, we've got an admissions update, and then we've been joined by our Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Student Life, who's going to talk about the Student Life portfolio. Next slide, Barney. So just a reminder of the information that is available to you. You are receiving Careers Update from Lois on a regular basis. That's your go-to for all the information, and some of the information that you receive today will be very new, hot off the press, not to be released yet. But we're letting you into a few changes, and we will put all of those changes once they've been signed off officially by our academic board in Careers Update. So look out for that next edition. Also remind you that you can still interact with our staff through booking a visit. So we've been doing lots and lots of virtual webinars throughout this shutdown period. And it's been really terrific because we've been getting to schools that we've been unable to travel to previously. So I would encourage you to look at that, book a visit now on our page. Next one. So there's Barney, and you may see him during this presentation. So this is Barney doing one of his regular Zooms, and it applies to all of the other people in our team. So lots of options there for you to choose from. Next one is just a slide reminding you of who's who in our zoo as far as what our regions are. Again, encourage you to contact all of those people there, our metro schools, and I believe the next slide shows you rural schools. So there are our regions for rural, and the last one is for interstate. So I do encourage you to make contact with those staff. Okay, if you've got a question, go through them. Now, I would encourage you, we've got our Principal Scholarship. All schools have received information about this Principal Scholarship. It is worth $5,000 one-off payment, guaranteed accommodation, not paid accommodation, but guaranteed accommodation. So far, we've received some applications for that. Last year, we just wanted to point out that 101 students enrolled from schools that didn't nominate a student, which is a bit of a shame because it means that those 101 students would have had the opportunity to receive a principal scholarship had their schools nominated them. So I encourage you to put in a nomination. We do know that students change their preferences, but it'd be great to be able to give all those scholarships away. Open days. This year, clearly, we're doing things differently. At the moment, we've got open day, and that has changed since yesterday. Sorry, it's Saturday and Sunday, the 5th and the 6th of September. So it will be on the weekend at this stage. Okay, all day. We're just getting our program confirmed now. There's an expression of interest website up. We are also having a graduate open days, and we will send that. All of that information will be confirmed in our careers update. There's live chats, there's virtual campus tours, we've got accommodation briefings, all of those sorts of things that you would expect to get at a normal open day. So register to receive extra updates. Okay, so now I would like to introduce our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Duncan Maskell. He's been sending out virtual little videos every Friday afternoon to us. I know that you haven't had the opportunity to hear from him at previous seminars because we've often got very busy time when these seminars are on. So we're really delighted that he's here today to speak to you. So I will pass over to him.
Hello everybody. Thanks for joining us at the University of Melbourne today. I'm really glad to have the chance to be part of this seminar for career practitioners organised by our fantastic onshore recruitment team in student and scholarly services. A big welcome to everyone who is watching across Australia and New Zealand. Before I start, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which the campuses of the University of Melbourne stand, the Wurundjeri people, the Boonwurrung people, the Dja Dja Wurrung people, and the Yorta Yorta people. I pay my respects to the Indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging, and I acknowledge Indigenous colleagues who are watching or listening to this. These are really strange times for everyone and burdensome in so many ways. So I start by saying that I really appreciate the work being done by so many people across the education sector to keep our young people on track with their education and careers, and that includes everybody watching today. We all know of the big challenges faced by schools in particular because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm sure you've all experienced some very hard days. But you are doing crucial work for the future, and I wish you strength and resilience to continue. Here at the University of Melbourne, we've also faced our challenges, and I'm full of admiration for our staff and our students for the way they've risen to meet them since March. We have more than 68,000 students enrolled at this university. We have a fantastic curriculum, the Melbourne curriculum, which is well known, not just across Australia, but internationally as well. And I'd certainly heard of it at the University of Cambridge before I came here. And our staff and students have done a great job taking that curriculum online and continuing to teach and learn, and in many cases research at home. We've recently completed the Semester 1 assessment period online, and it's been very successful. We still have approximately 500 staff working on the campus, including those involved with critical research projects. I have to say though, I'm really looking forward to the day we all get back to campus. The likelihood is that we won't all be back for Semester 2 2020, but we hold out hope for Semester 1 2021. I'm speaking to you today from the office in my home, which is a short walk from our Parkville campus. I still walk onto the campus whenever it's allowed, and it's still a very beautiful place, but I've got to say I am greatly missing the students. My philosophy is that a university is all about knowledge. It's about the curation of knowledge, but it's also about inquiry and the interrogation of knowledge in all the disciplines, from the sciences to the humanities and in the professional disciplines. And it's about research and discovery that begins with that interrogation of knowledge. The point about it all is that all this great work needs to take place with the active participation of our students. Students are, of course, essential to a university. So I really look forward to seeing our students back on campus as soon as possible. And I hope to meet some of your students if they choose to come to the University of Melbourne to study in the years ahead. There are many good reasons for choosing Melbourne as a place to study, of course. I came here after a career in the UK, partly because I love the city here as well as the university. It's a great place for the arts, for music, for sport. And because I live where I do, I've chosen the local side, Carlton, as my AFL team. And we've even won a couple of games recently, which is good. But Melbourne is also a great city for food, parks and gardens, and so much more. This is, of course, very much reduced at the moment, but I am confident that the city will come roaring back once we emerge from this acute phase of the pandemic. Melbourne is also a very international city, which I love. And as a university, we are very globally focused, which is incredibly important to me. I'm a scientist by background. Microbiology is in fact my field, so I do take a keen interest in the SARS-CoV-2 virus at a number of levels. I also love music, and I used to play clarinet and saxophone pretty seriously, both classical and jazz. I really believe in the power of the arts, of literature, of painting, of drama and performance. And this is all a big part of who we are as a university. Take our South Bank campus, and if you haven't been there, you really have to go. It is right in the heart of the Melbourne Arts District with brilliant new facilities like the Ian Potter South Bank Centre, which is home to the Melbourne Conservatorium of Music, and so much more. I love being here, and it really is a great place for young people to immerse themselves in a serious education, whatever field of study interests them most. Obviously, there is a huge range of options for study here in different disciplines, but one thing I think Melbourne does for every student in every subject area is to develop excellent thinking. While our education is excellent in terms of equipping our graduates for getting a job, we want to give them so much more than that. We educate students to think and to think from multiple knowledge perspectives and creatively. This is a crucial thing to develop in every generation, and especially today, I think. I should also mention that I think every Australian university, including Melbourne, undersells itself somewhat on the quality of what it does. Coming from a career in the Northern Hemisphere, as I do, the outstanding quality of university education here is very striking. Melbourne really does have all of the qualities you find in great universities overseas, which is why I think you will see Melbourne become more and more prominent on the world stage in times to come. The research at our Peter Doherty Institute, just a little way down Royal Parade from where I live, is one example. There in February, scientists were the first in the world outside China to grow the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. It was a really important and valuable research breakthrough and underlines the quality of the work in this university community. So I really do believe in this university as an outstanding knowledge community and highly recommend it to you and your students as you discuss further study and careers options in the months ahead. I know that this message is part of a wider set of messages from my colleagues, Kelly Henderson-Giles and Kerry Lee Krause. And I understand we have a few more sessions scheduled in the months to come. I hope that you are able to join us at these times too. I wish you all the best with the seminar and with your work in helping your students in the second half of 2020. Thanks very much and very best wishes. Goodbye.
Hi again. I understand that some of you are having difficulties with the video. I'll just remind you that all of these sessions are going to be recorded and you will get that video at the end. So don't stress if you can't see it at the moment. I know it's not ideal. So I would now like to introduce Kelly Henderson-Giles, who is going to give an update. Kelly is our admissions manager undergraduate, and I know that you'll be very interested in what she's got to say. So I'll hand over to Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wendy. Welcome, everybody. Yes, thanks for having me. So As Wendy has already said, the slides for today's session will be circulated to you later today. So some of these slides I'm going to skim through quite quickly, and you will have them obviously to refer back to later on. And Barney is taking us through the slides today. Thank you, Barney. So I'm going to very quickly give you the rundown on our start year selection outcomes for this year, as we share these with you around this time every year. I have some reminders to share as well. And then, as Wendy mentioned at the start of this session, we do have some big sort of news about changes coming your way for 2021 selection. And then possibly we might have time for a couple of questions at the end, or we might be taking questions towards the end of today's session. I should note as well that my colleague Liz Tinkler and Wendy's team are responding to questions that you submit via chat. Yeah, so obviously you're getting informed responses that way also. So start year 2020 selection outcomes, very quickly skimming through these slides, just to let you know, we made just marginally more offers to domestic applicants in all of the start year intake offer rounds this year. And as you can see there, it were fairly similar numbers to the same time in 2019. And across to the next slide, just a reminder about the lowest selection ranks that we made offers to in the start year intake this year. And these lowest selection ranks for most courses were fairly consistent with the same time in 2019. Thanks, Barney. Now, a reminder about the importance of our Access Melbourne scheme. 33% of our December round and January round VTAC offers for the start year intake this year were made to applicants who were eligible for Access Melbourne. That figure is exactly consistent with round one VTAC offers in 2019, which we also made 33% of our undergraduate offers to Access Melbourne applicants. So a very important scheme for us, and a reminder, I guess, about the importance as well of our disadvantaged financial background and rural or isolated area categories, because we have those Access Melbourne guarantees in place. So we'll skim past this one. Just a couple of reminders, and some of these are really for the benefit of some of our careers practitioners who are joining us today from further afield and from New Zealand. So just a quick reminder that all domestic students are required to apply via the Victorian Tertiary Admission Centre for all of our undergraduate programs. And yeah, very basically, I'm sure you all know this, domestic applicants are Australian citizens or permanent residents, and our New Zealand citizens also. And domestic applicants, even if they're studying a US high school diploma or studying A-levels in Europe, they do need to all apply through VTAC for our undergraduate programs. And the difference for international students is they need to apply through VTAC for us if they're completing an Australian Year 12 qualification. And that's whether they're completing that qualification with you in your schools here in Australia, or if they're completing an Australian qualification offshore as well. So we receive their applications through VTAC. And this, for University of Melbourne, this advice is consistent for both our start year intakes and our mid-year intakes. Thank you, Barney. A very quick reminder, or I guess some helpful URLs for those of you who are joining us for the first time perhaps this year. The University of Melbourne does have a number of special entry schemes, and all of these schemes allow us to give additional consideration for eligible applicants. Access Melbourne is obviously our largest scheme. I've already referenced the numbers that we made offers for in start year intake this year, but we also have Year 11-12 special consideration. I'm going to talk more about Access Melbourne and Year 11-12 special consideration towards the end of my slides. For Indigenous applicants, for those of you who have Indigenous students studying with you, it's good to know that all Indigenous applicants who have demonstrated likelihood to succeed in their proposed course of study are considered by the University of Melbourne and need to be selected. That's written into our selection and admission policy. And finally, if you have elite athletes studying and training with you, we do have an elite athletes and artistic performers entry scheme, which it would be very good for those students to be aware of. Very quick reminder about deferrals. So I think University of Melbourne is slightly different from some other universities in that deferral is not automatic with us, but undergraduate domestic applicants who receive course offers from us, they can apply to defer the commencement of their studies. Some of our courses don't allow deferral, and that's primarily our courses that have very small cohorts, or our courses, our fine arts, our visual arts courses, our music course, where auditions and interviews are part of the selection process. So just to be aware for your students, some of our courses don't allow deferral. We would, if your students are keen to take a gap year or similar, we would advise them that they would need to reapply for those courses when they're ready to commence with us. The good news this year was that our courses that do allow deferrals have begun considering deferral requests for the mid-year intake as well as the start year intake this year, so that's new. And someone did send through some questions about deferral numbers for this year, given the COVID-19 disruption. So we did see very high number of deferrals coming through particularly in March this year, so higher than we had previously seen, both from domestic and from international applicants. But the good news is we have also seen much higher than normal rates of returning from deferral for our mid-year intake. So we've had a lot of students who obviously had cancelled had their plans disrupted this year. They had planned to take a gap year, but they have now contacted us and are returning to study in semester 2 because they can obviously get a head start on their studies with us in semester 2 this year, which is great. So some changes for 2021 selection. So I'll start with some changes for our fine arts and music courses. So a very good news for fine arts and music is that the faculty have this year managed to standardise the application closing date for all streams of our fine arts course and for Bachelor of Music applicants. And the closing date for all of these this year will be the 30th of September, which, as you may know, coincides with VTAC's timely application closing date for the 2021 start year intake. So this is great news. These courses previously have had earlier closing dates, and sometimes students have been caught off guard. So very good news for your students. Audition and interview details for these courses. As you might expect, these are still being ironed out because, again, the faculty is needing to work out how to audition and interview students, given that they can't run face-to-face auditions and interviews this year. But the faculty have assured us as recently as yesterday, they're well underway in planning out audition and interview information, and they will be publishing that on their website, on our website, sorry, by the 3rd of August. And that information will be there as a resource for your students if they're thinking of applying for fine arts or music courses. And finally, Bachelor of Music, the Chancellor's Scholars Program. Many of you will know that this has in recent years been listed as a separate VTAC course code in the VTAC system. As of next year, this will no longer be listed as a separate code and course in VTAC because Bachelor of Music, the audition is the same, whether it's for a Bachelor of Music application or a Music Chancellor's Scholars. So the faculty have moved to roll these two course codes into one in the VTAC system. The audition process is the same, but just to reassure you that if you do have students who are very talented with music and also aiming to achieve one of the very high ATARs, eligible applicants who achieve the ATAR and the audition score for the Chancellor's Scholars Program will definitely still be receiving the Melbourne Chancellor's Scholarship and all of the associated benefits. They just won't see the Bachelor of Music Chancellor's Scholars Program course code in VTAC. So this is, I think, a win for students. It simplifies things and they don't need to list both music and music Chancellor's Scholars in their VTAC preferences moving forward. Now, this is the drum roll moment that Wendy mentioned at the top. So we do have hot off the press for your eyes only today, some guaranteed ATARs for 2021 entry for domestic applicants. Many of you will know that our Bachelor of Commerce has had a domestic guarantee in place for a number of years. Bachelor of Commerce will again have a guarantee for domestic applicants in 2021, but hot off the press from our committees here at the university, we have just had Bachelor of Agriculture, Arts, Biomedicine, Design and Science guaranteed ATARs given the first stage of approval. Now I've got a very big disclaimer here on the slide. These guaranteed ATARs haven't been through our second committee that gives us the final stage of approval, but we're very confident that this will happen during the last week of July. And as Wendy said at the top, as soon as these are approved, they will obviously be published online and we'll be sending out communication about these. But given the timing of this seminar today and given, I guess, the level of importance potentially that these guarantees offer for your students, we really wanted to give you the heads up today and introduce you to these today. So on the next slide, we've detailed our courses, the 2021 minimum ATARs, and they remain unchanged for this from 2020, but now we have the drum roll moment, the 2021 guaranteed ATARs for your domestic students. So as you can see, we've set a guarantee of an ATAR of 72 for agriculture. For arts, design and science, they have all set a guarantee at 88, biomedicine at 95, and commerce has put their guarantee to 95 for 2021. Now we really do need to remind everybody that domestic school leaver applicants will still need to satisfy the course prerequisites. But if they do satisfy the course prerequisites and they do achieve these ATARs, these really give them certainty ahead of selection, ahead of Christmas, etc., that they will have a place reserved for them or held for them at the University of Melbourne. I should say, obviously your students will still need to list these courses in their VTAC application in order to be considered for them. But as long as they've done that, they've completed the prerequisite subjects, once their ATARs are released, they've got that certainty that there is a guaranteed place for them. And now I should note as well, applicants will still be considered for offers if their final ATAR falls between the guaranteed ATAR and the minimum ATAR, but we can definitely guarantee that if they're at the guaranteed ATAR or above, that they've got a spot. Only applicants who are eligible for a special entry scheme will be considered below the minimum ATAR. This is consistent with our approach for many years, so I'm sure you're all aware of that, but just a reminder there. And note again, these guaranteed ATARs have not yet had our final approval, but we're expecting that in the last week of July, but we wanted to give you the first look at these today. Other minimum ATARs for domestic applicants, these also are waiting for final approval in the final week of July. But just a quick rundown about the minimum ATARs for our other courses for domestic applicants. The one I wanted to mention specifically here is oral health. So that our Bachelor of Oral Health hasn't set a guaranteed ATAR. And the reason for that is that the Bachelor of Oral Health has a very small intake each year, and it's necessarily a small intake into this course because we're limited by the number of dental chairs that the faculty have. So we literally have one student per one chair. So we really need to keep a careful eye on how many students we can take into this course, and that's the only reason, or that's the driver for oral health not being able to set a guaranteed ATAR. But yes, our other minimum ATARs here, and as Wendy said at the top, once these are approved, these will also be going straight out onto the website and being pushed out in communications to you and your students. And I think on the next slide, we talk about 2021 guarantees for international applicants. So many of you will know our guaranteed scores for international applicants are looked at every 2 years. These are being looked at again this year, and again these will be signed off on, all going well, by our committees in late July, and then they will be published online. Now we're over to 2021 Access Melbourne guarantees. So I mentioned at the top, Access Melbourne is a very important scheme for us. We make significant number of offers through Access Melbourne, and our Access Melbourne guarantee has been in place for several years for students who are eligible for the rural category or the disadvantaged financial background category. This year, some of the guaranteed ATARs have changed just slightly for some of our courses. So arts, design and science are now for 2021 going to be consistent on an ATAR of 78. So what this means is students who apply for Access Melbourne and are eligible for either or rural or disadvantaged financial background, if they satisfy the prerequisites and achieve an ATAR of 78, they are guaranteed a place in arts, design or science. Commerce is sitting at 86 for that guarantee for those two Access Melbourne categories, and biomedicine is sitting at 90 for 2021. Now for our Indigenous students, for confirmed Indigenous applicants, we also have guaranteed ATARs, which gives them certainty as well, which is great. So we're looking at 50 for our Arts Extended program, 55 for our Science Extended program, 70 for Bachelor of Design, and 85 for Bachelor of Biomedicine. And just a tiny note there that for Science Extended, there are additional prerequisites on top of English, as you would expect, and as many of you will know. So because of some of the ATARs have changed for some of these courses for 2021. This is hot off the press news as well. It hasn't yet been published on our website, and it is also waiting final approval in late July. And I think very quickly, because I'm running out of time, sorry, Barney, Wendy and Lois. So 2021 Start Your VTAC applications. Many of you will have seen that VTAC have now released key dates for applicants. Apologies to Interstate and New Zealand careers practitioners this morning. We don't yet have the dates, or VTAC haven't yet released the dates for some interstate and for students doing, for example, A-levels in New Zealand. Keep an eye on VTAC's website. Once those dates are locked in, they will definitely be made available there first. But for our VCE students, we've got change of preference dates here now, and the ATAR and VCE results release date on 30th of December. The application opening and closing dates are consistent for all cohorts. So opening soon on the 3rd of August, closing on 30th of September. That's the timely closing date. Reminder that the CEAS or scholarship applications need to be in by the 9th of October. And then the big news is there will be no December offer round this year, as you would expect. We won't have results in time because of disruptions. But the domestic January round on the 14th of January will be the big round for universities using the VTAC system. And 1st of February will be the first of the February offer rounds. Now, University of Melbourne does usually not participate in later February rounds. So usually we would just use the 1st February round. So 14th of January and 1st of February will be the key dates for offers coming to your students from University of Melbourne. I'm sorry, I am over time, but very strongly recommend that if you haven't already, you subscribe to VTAC's Careers Practitioners blog or attend one of their briefings. And they did run an excellent briefing yesterday talking about the start year 2021 intake, and they're doing repeat sessions next Tuesday and next Thursday. And I think I have one final slide. I'm very sorry, I'm running late. Now, just to try and come full circle and wrap this up. So at the University of Melbourne, as mentioned on an earlier slide, we do have both Year 11-12 special consideration and our Access Melbourne scheme. Now, just to remind you, where students have experienced short-term difficult circumstances or medical circumstances just during the 2 final years of their study, they will be considered under our Year 11-12 Special Consideration Scheme. Applications for that scheme are submitted through VTAC's Special Entry Access Scheme application, so the SEAS application. Your school leaver applicants who have experienced longer term disadvantage that has impacted their ability to achieve their best possible results, they will be considered under our Access Melbourne scheme. And again, applications for that scheme, it's very easy for students to apply. All applications are made through VTAC's SEAS application form. Now, I'm highlighting here, we might get some questions about this. VTAC have pushed out very, very detailed and helpful information about this just this week. VTAC have introduced a remote learning impact rating for 2021 intake, and they've also rolled out targeted questions within the SEAS category 4 difficult circumstances. And these impacts and these questions will allow applicants to articulate the impact of COVID-19 on their family and on their personal circumstances. The SEAS application is something we strongly recommend every year for students who have claims, but this year particularly we would very strongly recommend that your students apply for SEAS under both Category 1, Personal Information and Location, and Category 4, Difficult Circumstances. And the Category 4 will now allow your students to tell VTAC and tell tertiary institutions if they have had more than what we would see as the standard difficult circumstances because of the COVID-19 disruptions. So the standard difficult circumstances will be things like students unable to participate in group work, students being disrupted because of lockdown periods, etc., etc. VTAC are taking all of that into account. And VTAC said something really helpful yesterday. So a reminder that for all onshore students, the ATAR is actually a ranking. If all Year 12 students in Australia this year have been impacted, then the ATAR will reflect that. So the ATAR is a rank. All students we know have been affected by remote learning this year. The ATAR will affect that. But for your students who have had additional impact because of COVID-19, we strongly recommend they apply through SEAS, and they will then get additional consideration through either our Year 11-12 Special Consideration Scheme or for longer term disadvantage, our Access Melbourne scheme. I hope I've articulated that fairly well. I'm very sorry, Wendy, I've run over.
Oh, thank you very much, Kelly. We really appreciate you giving that. And can I please implore you not to publish any of that information that we've just given you the preview to until we give you the official go-ahead. I only briefed my staff at 9 o'clock this morning on this information. That's how hot off the press it is. So it is with great pleasure I introduce our next speaker. So Professor Kerry-Lee Krause is our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Student Life. Her position was initiated or thought about 12 months prior to her arriving in December. We really wanted to put the emphasis on current students in our future university deliberations. And Kerry arrived in December and had to manage the shutdown of the university and move to remote learning very, very quickly. So unfortunately, she hasn't had the opportunity to be on the grounds as much as she would, and usually her backdrop, we can't do this in GoToWebinar, is a beautiful scene of the campus, because I know that's where she really wants to be. So thank you very much, Kerry, for coming and visiting with us today.
A pleasure, Wendy. Thank you very much. And it's morning here, so good morning to all of you on the webinar. It's wonderful to know that we have colleagues joining from around the country and New Zealand. So I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking with you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations here in Melbourne. And I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and indeed I acknowledge all First Nations colleagues who might be on the call today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Student Life portfolio, but because we're limited in time and because I do want to make sure there is time for questions, I won't be covering all the slides. I'm happy to make them available. But really, I just wanted to, first of all, give a shout out to each of you and the role that you play. I have a long-standing high recognition and esteem for careers advisors and practitioners for a couple of reasons. One is right now I'm working through a number of scholarship applications, and many of them have reference letters from people like yourselves, and you play such a key role in the lives of the young people with whom you work, and I wanted to say thank you for that. I also was chair of the Admissions Transparency Committee a couple of years ago, set up by the federal government to try to ensure that there was a more transparent approach to university admissions for your students. And it was during that period that I also realized just how pivotal careers practitioners are, no matter what sort of role you play or what title. I know the role you have in the lives of the young people you represent. So I wanted to recognize that and thank you for your work. And it's great to be able to speak with you a little bit about this portfolio. As Wendy said, the Student Life portfolio was introduced late last year. The white paper you can download if you're interested, but basically it focuses on what our university strategy is all about. And you heard Professor Maskell speaking earlier, and he is very serious in authentic ways, serious about putting students at the heart of everything we do. And my role is here to work right across the university with colleagues, with students and with staff to make this a reality. You can see the ambitions of the Student Life portfolio. Moving to the next slide, there are three key things I'll briefly update you on that may be of interest to yourselves and your students. One suite of activities is about welcoming the students into the university. I'll give you an update on that in a moment. We're also looking at the role of the curriculum in terms of not only welcoming students and helping them to learn about how to learn successfully in the university setting, but also making sure that towards the end of their study, they are set up to succeed with applied learning. And I'll talk briefly about some of the other work we're doing outside of the formal learning environment to connect with our students. So on the transition and connection slide, if we skip to the next one and the one to follow, you can see here, I'm hoping some of you heard or read about the fantastic groundbreaking Melbourne commencement ceremonies at the start of this year. These were the good old days when people came in person to campus, and they are here in the exhibition building in beautiful downtown Melbourne. And you can see the numbers on the slide here. We had a commencement ceremony for each degree program, and it was just fantastic. And the feedback from the students was particularly positive. And they're still talking about how great it was that at least they could come on campus in person for the start of the year. And we will definitely keep the commencement ceremony going in some way, shape or form. On the next slide, you can see some photos of the experience. It was a real festival, and one of the distinguishing features was that the students had a way to connect with academic staff from the get-go, and they really appreciated that. Moving on to the next slide, we can see the peer mentoring initiative that was designed specifically to bring first-year students, many of whom had never set foot on campus, have never sat in a university lecture, maybe from regional areas or indeed international students, for whom the whole idea of university study is quite a foreign concept. This was their first introduction to a group of supportive peers and a peer mentor, a later year student, who could work with them, and we've connected them virtually over the last semester. And later in their experience, obviously the role of networking with alumni becomes important. So we've developed a student life cycle approach to engaging with our students in different ways as appropriate through the lifespan. Over the next slide, I'll just give you a very brief snapshot of some of the feedback that we've had from students. And you'll see in one of those quotes a reference to a hoodie. The students really did seem to appreciate those hoodies, and it had emblazoned on the front a reference to their degree program. So from the beginning, helping them to build that sense of cohort and connection, which often is missing in very large cohorts of students. Over to the next couple of slides. Let's move to the next one. There we go. You can see here we're looking at bookending the experience of the students within the curriculum by introducing them in first year discovery subjects to those really important ways of learning and ways of engaging with the university, with its research, with their peers in first year discovery subjects as part of the curriculum. And then towards the end of their study, introducing a capstone experience that helps them to integrate their learning. So the curriculum plays a key role in this, but let me take you to the next slide where we talk about connections with our academic staff. So starting next semester for our first year students, so those of your students who are at the university who are going into the second half of their first year, they will be meeting with an academic advisor. The feedback we have from students across the sector actually is that many of them graduate from undergraduate study without having really built a connection with an academic staff member. They go in and out of classes and tutorials, but they don't build that long-standing relationship. Academic advising is designed to connect us. A group of students, around 8 students, will form a peer group who meet with an academic and they get to talk through what their questions are, what challenges they're facing, to learn from an academic member of staff. And this will be a cohort experience through their undergraduate studies. Again, quite unique. This is done in the US quite a bit, but certainly not widespread in Australia. So we're looking forward to introducing that, as well as recognising more and more co-curricular activities that students do so that they have something to show for their co-curricular learning. I'll finish off on a slide that just gives you an update of the next one we'll finish on. A brief update on just a small selection of the things that we have put in place to support our students through what I'm sure you are experiencing as an incredibly disruptive, anxiety-ridden time. Our students are in no way immune from that sense of crisis and anxiety, and you can see some very tangible support we've given by way of grants and support fund. We've also set up a virtual campus to try to emulate that sense of connection in a virtual environment while the students are not able to be here in person. And on the well-being side, just as you find in the school setting, at university, well-being is just so critically important. And we've done a number of things, and this is just one of them, where we've taken a personalised approach to contacting individual students and following up with them. And in addition to that, a number of other elements of support, including telehealth and our counselling support that has been ramped up, etc. So we are very mindful of the need of every one of our students and the families they represent, and that is a big part of the focus on student life. So I hope that gives you a bit of a snapshot of what we have been doing to support your students, and we really look forward to welcoming the new cohort and supporting them in the year ahead. And with that, I'll stop, Wendy, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
So have we got any questions coming through from the audience, Barney or Lois? And thank you, I should say, sorry, I was distracted there, Kerry Lee, thank you very much for that introduction to your role, and we hope to hear more throughout the year as things progress, and hopefully we get back to campus. So I'm just saying, just seeing here, so no, Lois says there aren't any questions coming through. So earlier we gave you a link which is on Careers Update to all of our staff. So do feel free to contact them in the coming weeks. It's been terrific news to hear of the certainty provided by those guarantees, Kelly. And I would like to acknowledge all of you for attending today, and we will leave you, and you've got an extra 8 minutes in your day, which I know is very valuable. So thank you very much for attending. We will send you dates for the next seminars and look forward to seeing you then. Bye.